when the historians write the history of the world, it's always written BC, that is before Christ and after Christ. 100 years from now, when historians of that time write about the history of the world, there will again be BC, but it will not be before Christ. It will be before COVID and after COVID. Because the world we walked in after the COVID is dramatically different than the world we entered. Everything what we do is done differently, and it will be dramatically different than what it is today. In fact, COVID has changed the world. But in this war against the COVID, one nation has emerged as a leader, and that nation is India. I have studied all the countries, how they have managed COVID. I have no doubt that with all the resource constraint we had, all the criticism we face from the Western media, we have done the best in one yardstick, that is saving precious lives. How this happened? This happened because the leadership provided by the political leaders who are governing the country, led by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. I have no doubt that the decisions he took and the steps he took, in spite of all the odds, made a huge, huge difference. I will give you one example. When India declared lockdown well before many other countries, when large number of the migrant laborers were stranded everywhere, were criticized by the global media. But today we can boast that we have the best results of managing COVID only because of the timely lockdown India took. Why that lockdown was important at that period? It was important because COVID was first declared in China, and we had no clue what the implications of COVID was, because everything was suppressed and hidden. But when Chinese workers traveled to Italy and started embracing Italians, then the hell broke out. And the way the Italian hospital got flooded with patients in no time, where the entire NHS was getting paralyzed, we learnt many, many things from them. Of course, we learnt lessons. Our lessons are built on the corpses of thousands of people who died in those countries. We learned that most important thing is protect the life of the health workers. They are very precious. And for which we needed PPE, we needed N95 mask. I'm a doctor practicing for over 40 years. I didn't know what PPE was. I didn't know why N95 mask was required. And forget about knowing, we didn't even have the capability to make it. But that time we borrowed by a stringent lockdown, postponed the onset of the assault from the virus by at least few weeks, which gave us sufficient time to induce our Indian companies to make protective PPEs and come up with the N95 mask and everything to protect the staff. Then another most important lesson we learned: when somebody is suffering from an infection, especially a deadly infection called COVID, you will never give them steroids. But the lessons we learned from England and Italy, from the doctors treating the patient, is that COVID, there is only one treatment, that is steroid. And God has been very kind to us. We are the pharmacy for the world, so we had enough steroids in stock. And because of the time we earned by the stringent lockdown, we are able to prepare the onset of COVID and treat it efficiently. So thanks to the leadership of our Prime Minister. Then many things happened at the state level. And one of the hero about whom we are discussing today, affectionately called by everyone as a Himanto, is a true leader, and I happened to meet him around 13 years ago. I was one of the governors of Medical Council of India, and first thing I did when I became the governor of Medical Council, which is the apex body controlling the medical education, was to call every Ministry of Health of every state of the country, asking them how many medical colleges they want, how many PG seats they want. You just tell us, we will provide it. No more red tape in Medical Council, we are here to guide you. It's sad that not many came forward, not many responded. But there was one man who came, and I saw the visiting card. It is written Dr. Himanto Biswa Sarma, and I met him with this colleague. And I had a detailed conversation with him, and it was very eye-opener for me, because I was talking to a health minister of a state who had an in-depth knowledge about what is happening and what needs to be done, and I was very impressed. But when I was talking to him, I thought I am talking to a doctor who is a health minister, because his visiting card mentioned doctor. Only after a few years I realized that he wasn't a medical doctor, and that is the degree of knowledge he has about the medical education. And when COVID struck Assam, and some of the events written in the book, and the way the book was presented, like a book which is a coffee table book, I would like a writer to change it to a business book on leadership. This is truly a leadership book for the young emerging leaders. First of all, what are the leaders how a leader acts? The first thing a leader does is to protect his team. It's very, very important that when you are preparing for the war, it is important for you to protect the team. And at a very early stage, Himanto realized that all the nurses, all the doctors have to be protected, because if they fall sick in the first round of war, you have lost the battle. So they went out of the way to procure PPEs, N95 masks and everything well before COVID hit Assam. It's one of the very few states in the country which prepared and procured these items in advance. The second leadership lesson is something very traumatic for most Indians. I would like to thank the sacrifices of all the doctors' wives, mainly, of course spouse, but most of the doctors who were the COVID war front were married, they had young children, and I can just imagine what they all went through when their husbands were going for work. In good old days, it's only when your husband is a soldier during the war, you are scared of losing him. But today, COVID showed us that there is one more profession in which you lose your loved ones, that is medical profession. We can't run away. And it was very sad and heartening for me to see my wife. She has 4 children and a husband. All of us were working in a hospital which is filled with COVID patients. And this went on for over 2 years. And by the grace of God, We all have survived and lived happily ever after, even after that. But it was one of the worst periods for all the wives. So, the victory of COVID is the result of sacrifices made by all these wives, all the doctors, all the nurses. Because ultimately it is the nurses who were on the bedside of the patient 24 hours. And you can just imagine when in the first COVID wave, large number of patients were dying, to be with the person who is dying, with the fear when earlier when we were facing patients, it is only about the patient's life and the patient death we were worried about. With COVID, it was the doctors who were worried about their own life. So, other leadership lesson from the Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Sarma, is about the taking care of the team and looking after them in a manner that they will always have trust in your leadership. When the doctors were sick, they were taken care in the best hotel where we are sitting here with all the facilities, and nothing short of the best was provided. This would have motivated all the team to do their best. Himanto showed that even under a very, very difficult situation, a leader can somehow take the team to the victory, and then history will be written and rewritten around them. And it is my privilege to talk about him today. I'm extremely grateful to him for giving me the opportunity to talk about him. I'm extremely grateful to all of you, and I'm extremely grateful to our dynamic leader, Chief Minister of Assam, Dr. Sharma, for giving me the opportunity and showing other leaders the path to succeed.